and welcome to a special episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined today by one of the most amazing people I've been fortunate to meet. She is, I would have to say, one of the kindest people I've ever met and has the biggest heart and does all kinds of stuff to help people. And I know is learning to help herself as well. So without further ado, I give you the awesome guest, Chelsey Turpening Coxsey.
Hi, nice to be here. I'm glad. Thank you for the intro.
You're welcome. And so, for people who don't really understand what dream analysis is, can you explain somewhat of that and how you got into it?
Yeah. So dream analysis is doing like a really deep subconscious dive, is how I refer to it, but it's interpreting the language of symbolism and your emotional internal aspects, as well as like metaphysical aspects through dreams. So I don't normally like interpret one dream. I go through and I'll work a whole series of dreams, and we'll follow along in each session. We'll bring on more and more dreams and kind of dissect them into internal parts, which would be like the internal family system. And then yeah, they usually, I always say dreams are like a small puzzle piece that represents a very large picture. And it creates who we are, so it gets fun.
So, what got you into studying this and going on to that such a deep adventure?
My own dreams did. So several. I've always been one who has had vivid dreams and like lucid dreams and stuff. But it wasn't until probably like 4, 5 years ago I started in doing my own dream analysis. I was keeping a journal and writing my dreams down on a daily basis, big or small. And when I started reading through them, I realized that there was like a very large concept going on. I was able to pick out different patterns. And then, so like from there, it inspired me to want to create the space for other people. So I'm technically a life coach, but I use Carl Jung techniques. I use the internal family system and your own personal symbolism, getting familiar with it. And it usually creates its own language. So I've still working on like different certifications and stuff, but at the moment, it's just kind of it's a lot of self study and bringing it to the space with certain tools. So I'm sure I always find new tools to bring along the way.
I'm sure we're always finding new tools for stuff. So, one question I have for you, you probably get asked a lot, or maybe you haven't, is when I go to sleep, I'm tapping into my subconscious because it's like the easiest time when everything's quiet in the mind, so you can access it. How do you differentiate a lucid dream, from a soul memory, or your subconscious sharing a memory of your past?
Well, it's technically all in the file cabinet. So I usually, if you're like going like a past life regression or in a dream, you'll notice scenes and things. I don't know, it just resonates. So I don't always know how to pull it out right away, but sometimes it's pretty obvious. But we go through, and sometimes we may not realize it's a past life dream until later in the analysis sessions when it's kind of stands out uniquely as its own. I know, like as an example, when I was a little kid, I used to have dreams that I was a little boy who drowned in a pond on a farm. So I knew that for me, that was obviously I never had the experience of drowning before, and that wasn't from that life, especially as a kid. So like some dreams are obvious in their past lives. Some of them are a bit like very symbolic. Like if you ever go through your internal library, sometimes you'll dream that you're in a really old library even, and it will like hint towards being like an Akashic records. Um, but everything appears differently in dreams. So it may not even be an actual scene that you were in. So it might not always be black and white, but it could be like connecting with aspects of yourselves from another life that I don't know, it looks foreign, but you kind of know. I always say you at the end of the day, it resonates with the dreamer the most. So like the dreamer usually knows the answer to what they're looking for, or what it would be. It's a good
Right.
question.
And
It's more difficult.
Right, and I understand that, and I guess also, sorry, my mom's printing something, so apologize for that, everyone. Um, so what I was gonna ask is too is also those people who like astral travel. They like for me as an example is traveling. I don't feel like I dream. I don't remember dreaming. So, how do you go about that and unlocking dreams that I'm sure they had, but they have no conscious memory of having?
Um, well, normally we try to talk about the dreams they do remember having, but there are so like I always say there's like memory triggers. You could be going about your day or even a couple days later and you'll remember something random will trigger you remembering it. But some tricks I do just if it's like a fuzzy dream or if you feel like you remember parts of it but not all of a dream, I would say like you could get quiet, try to go in meditation, kind of relive the scenes you do remember and let it kind of come to surface. um, a lot of the times, even just remembering how you felt. I've noticed the more we talk about the dreams, the more it comes back to memory. So that's like, or at least more details. It may not be perfect right at first, but you can start remembering little details or fuzzy aspects or parts that are important or just that bring up uh, just more details to the one specific dream. Everyone's a little different. So I've had people who are like, I don't remember my dreams ever or hardly at all. But then when we start doing sessions like the week before, they're like, oh, I'm definitely having a lot of dreams now. So I think it's sometimes it's setting the intention, but it's always there. So you're just accessing it.
Well, that's good to know because I've often been like waking up and feeling like I never slept and going, I must not have dreamed, and knowing, yes, I did, I just don't remember.
Yeah, it's there. And yeah, like astral projecting, usually you'll remember that because they tend to be lucid and more vivid and odd. So like it's not your normal dreamscape land. It will be very different.
And right, and so I'm kind of curious too. In sessions, have you ever come across? You don't have to give details or anything, but somebody who says, "Oh, I had this dream," and you're like, "Ooh, that dream feels like a premonition, and you really need to be cautious about this," or um, "This is starting to sound like something I may need to report."
Maybe not to that extreme, but I have had it come across the sessions a couple times. One was someone with their physical health, and I don't like to sit there and set things in stone, but I realize sometimes our internal worries will come through in dreams. But then sometimes it's something very random, and like we dig into it, see if they were worried about it or thought about it. But I have not seen one come to light yet, at least. uh, I know with my personal experiences I have, but with some of the clients, we do talk about visions and stuff in like the group workshops and how that would work. But um, I try not to freak people out depending on what it is. So like we've had ones where like maybe someone was going like a past loved one's gonna die, or like there's they need to go to the doctor and get something checked out. I usually, I'm not a physician, but sometimes with a dream like that, I'll be like, you should maybe go get a checkup just to make sure because it is common. Like Carl Jung in his last book he wrote about this little girl who gifted, so it's one of his friends daughters who had died, but the year prior for Christmas she had written her dreams out for her dad as a Christmas gift, and they were really wild, archetyped, and kind of cool, right? But when he started digging through them after she had died, he had realized that the illness that she had that killed her was showing up in warnings of the dream. Like her body was trying to tell her that she was sick or there was something wasn't right. And so like that's common. Yeah. Like your subconscious knows a lot more details than your consciousness does. So like what slips by the consciousness does not slip by the subconscious, and it will interact with you like it's your own personality, it's your own brain. So like it just kind of talks back different.
Right, and I gotta say, I like. hearing how you say you use the symbology for the individual person because I've often you go to the store, like a bookstore or something, to get a book on dreams because you're like, I keep having like a specific dream, and there's like hundreds of books, and everybody has a different definition of what this symbol of a dream means or what this part of the dream means. So it's interesting. I was wondering how you determine which source of information you're going to use to help the person.
I don't go off of any of that stuff at all. Each person has their own emotional and attachment to symbols. So, like water, as an example, could be a positive healing type good thing in someone's dreams, right? But then the person next to them is afraid of water, and for them it's could be like something of fear or anxiety or have a different context. So like the way we perceive symbolism is very personable. Like the dream dictionaries would tend to try to go off of like this mass collective idea, but they're really just I think it's to stir your brain or give you an idea. But I have been on like Facebook groups where people like are very matter of fact with symbolism, and I do not agree with that at all. That is not the point of symbolism. It is ideally, I realize some symbolism can be black and white in society, but like when it comes to dreams and the way our subconsciousness uses material to push back at us symbolically, it uses it to the individual. So I usually would use like the art of questioning, trying to dig deeper to see how it made them feel. Feelings often tend to show what if it's a positive or a negative. You know what I mean? It kind of gives more
Right.
detail on what that symbol would could mean to someone else. But it's also like a flow of a language. So like when people try to give me a dream real quick, I say, give me as much detail as you can about the dream. You know, if it's how you felt about it, were you feeling confusion going through it? Like, as an example, a popular dream is like getting lost in an airport or going through an airport, going through a mall, feeling lost in a mall, maybe a parking lot or a city. Like, those are more common ones. And they tend to just, like, from what I've noticed, it represents like going through something like transitioning through something, if it be transitioning and going through the phases of life, or maybe if it was with work or something you are currently working on, things like that. So it kind of show a progression of moving forward and how you feel going through that scene. And it's not always the same. So that's why I like symbolism.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, and I can't help but like sit here and wonder, how do you get people to divulge what the symbols mean? Like you're saying, water meaning something different from everybody else, especially when they're not people who normally think of symbols and what they mean.
Yeah. Well, when we get in the sessions, I try to get them into mindset for sure. And they clients tend to do the self-discovery and the dissecting with me, so they're kind of learning as they go too. But to talk to someone randomly off the street, sometimes it's hard to say. I'll give them like 3 or 4 options of what it could mean maybe, and see if it resonates with them. Um, and some of them are more obvious than others, but you never want to be like matter of fact with it because it still evolves. Like, so like the morning you have a dream, you'd be like, okay, that was weird. I didn't know what that meant. Maybe you find out a couple months later what that meant, or it resonates more, or you know what the symbolism means, but and that morning you have it, you're like, oh, it means this. And then like 6 months later, you go back and you read through your stuff and it has more depthness to it on a very interesting level, like different layers. So like going for me, it's all within the context and what's going on in the dream scenes. Usually it's not just water. There's a lot more to it with the elements. So like that kind of would give it away too. Usually there's like keywords or key parts I look for, and each dream's different, so it's hard to like say what that would be, but when I hear it, I know it, and I'm like, okay, we gotta look for these 3 symbols that flow in a certain have a certain energetic flow with each other that would kind of give like a message. If you're familiar with tarot, kind of the same thing a little bit.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm kind of curious because I know I don't normally share personal stuff, but I'll be working with you tomorrow. And I'm wondering, like, have you ever come across a dream where you're trying to analyze it and you're like, I just can't. I have, there's nothing, no tricks I have, nothing to go on and be like, you know what? You've stumped me.
Yeah, we do come across dreams like that. Usually would analyze anywhere from 5 to 10 dreams in a session. So like there might be one that doesn't make sense, but then when I look at the larger picture of the other dreams they had in that cluster of time period, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. Or I just say we let it evolve because normally the subconsciousness will reveal it at some point. It's just a matter of time. So like there's not always a rush. Hold on, my son. One second.
It's all right. So, for those of you just tuning in, we're discussing dream analysis.
Sorry, they're excited today. And my mom was trying to chase after him. She's like, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I got two little pups that'll probably come barking through at any time.
Yeah, right. They're all unpredictable. No, but what I was saying is if there's a dream that's kind of hard to figure out, I know it has holding value. I just don't know exactly what it is. I usually tend to let it sit to the side on the back burner and we might come back to it later that session or in the next session or two. Okay, go get your Nana. Hold on.
Oh, the joys of live shows and life itself. Such a beautiful thing. So much fun if you just can go with the flow.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, they're unpacking our moving pod. They're very excited about all their stuff. They keep coming to tell me all the fun things that are pulling out. Uh,
Well, it's great that they come to you and, and everything. Because I know from hearing from a lot of parents, those days will go by, and then you're going to be like, I miss those days when you would come and interrupt me to tell me these things.
yeah, they just unpacked my desk, so they're like, "Oh, mom's desk." uh, yeah, no, letting dreams sit on the back burner, letting them come to light on their own, and it usually always does. It tends to match a larger picture of a pattern. When I do dream analysis, a lot of the times we see the internal family system. And for those who are not familiar with that, it's the idea of your exterior family, but inside your head in its own way. Like you have your own internal parts. So it's not necessarily your family, but it's all you. But we do manifest different parts throughout life, depending on if you what your experiences are, if you go through trauma, or if you had someone always being a exterior voice that becomes an interior voice, that would be an inauthentic part. But we do is we'll always as like the basics we have our feminine and masculine side, our inner child, our higher self or our soul tends to represent itself in some way shape or form too. I've seen where the intuition comes in as a certain symbol as well. um so it can be a lot of parts but they all make up us. So mind is blown. I've never been this interrupted before. I'm just going to keep
It's
talking.
totally fine. As I said on one of your step aways, that this is the joys of life and live shows.
Okay. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm okay. So when I look at that, like the internal family system is a huge one, and they always show parts or like patterns. So like it's not always it's obvious sometimes, but I say like probably the most obvious would be your inner child, because it usually tends to take you back somewhere that you've been before, maybe like your old school, your home you grew up in, maybe a job you had when at one point. Um, and it usually has messages within that like insecurities or things that want to be heard. So it's the idea of taking all the internal parts, figuring out their patterns, how they represent themselves and that person or the dreamer, and then trying to differentiate like some of the imbalances or concerns or something. um, like the ego usually tends to be its own internal part and it will try to manage the other aspects that it dislikes about the person. So if it be like your intuition or maybe you're embarrassed of your inner child, so you're trying not to let your inner child come out in the physical parts of your life, you'll see these internal like arguments and stuff like that come in with the dream and the symbolism. So it gets fun and trippy to psychoanalyze ourselves that in depthly, but also have the symbolism that has to be sorted out too.
And you raise a good point with bringing up the ego, because I never thought of the ego as being interfacing with the dreams. It's like, because I've always understood the ego as being, like I was taught, it stands for Earth Guide only, and it helps you to go with the flow of being here and be able to sustain yourself here. But I never thought of it as also being in the dream state.
Yeah, it's really common. The ego is the manager. It tries to manage everything and keep it under control within what it feels reality should be or how the person should be. It's the one that tends to exile aspects of ourselves and not let it come out in daytime. So at night, the children play kind of thing, and it all comes out a little bit.
Right. And so, what do you do when you have a client whose ego just does not want anything to be analyzed and wants to fight you, so to speak, on, helping the person? How do you go about, sort of, I hate to say this in this way, but tricking or manipulating the ego to doing what you need it to do to help the person?
It's a slow process, honestly. It's something you don't want to push because the ego is uncomfortable a lot of the times bringing out those aspects. But at the end of the day, they all want to understand each other. So, like, if you read the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, he talks about the internal family system, but he even gives like suggested meditations. The idea to just sit down quietly and explore your internal parts. And it tends to be a lot easier to do than it sounds. Like people think that would sound complicated, but it's not because when we're at the end of the day, we're always talking to ourselves, right? And like, well, our parts kind of pop out at random times, unexpectedly or not. But when it comes to trying to manage them, we have to often go through like the internal belief system of how they view themselves. And I usually will have deep conversations at this point of the sessions and really try to explore what the insecurity is. Why was it on? Why won't you allow your intuition to come to light, or your inner child even, or your feminine or masculine side? Try to figure out if there were certain events in their life, there are people in their life that were kind of talking at it so much that they were embarrassed by it, or there was, because it's usually something that's embarrassed. What I've noticed at the end of the day, the ego is trying to survive in an ecosystem of the exterior world, so that it feels that there are rules and boundaries and things that are protocol that should be done. So it's tending, what I try to do is like loosen the ego up, make it curious and proud to explore, and the fact that there is a lot of beautiful aspects about ourselves that we don't allow come to light. And when we do allow it to come to light in a balanced way and in not a hurt way, that tends to really make the system better and safer and just cooler. So then I try to kind of get people's egos to want to do that, because they don't intentionally come about and are like, well, I don't want to do that, because obviously they're in my session, they're interested. But it's kind of funny because when you hit a certain level of the conversations, you'll notice where they kind of get iffy on maybe a certain thing about themselves. And so it's sometimes baby steps a little bit, and I've had success with it with some people, and some people a little bit of success where they've worked, like, we're working on it, but they got stomped a little bit, or kind of just fell off with the sessions. But I've seen the ego represent itself in a lot of different ways. And at the end of the day, maybe there are aspects about the person that are so broken up that they can't allow it to life or to light, because maybe like if they were abused or went through something really bad, there might be a reason why they don't want it to come to light. So what we try to do is find which internal parts get along with each other and which ones don't. And then we try to see which ones we could try to get along slowly or heal the relationship internally to where you'll accept it and kind of let it come back in a healthier way. So it's a
Yeah,
process.
it's interesting you bring that up, and you and I must be in sync because I was just thinking to myself, what if there's an event like a trauma that happened to you and the brain locked it away? And I know that those can bleed into dreams, and sometimes, the dream will allow, but even the dream gets locked away. How do
Hmm.
you help someone to unlock that, or do you leave it locked?
It depends on if the person wants to. I am not a trauma coach. I don't work with a lot of trauma. That's why I usually ask people how much trauma you've been through or anything bad. Have you been through therapy before or counseling? That usually tends to help. So, like as an example, one client had been through a lot of stuff as a child. He was seeing a therapist at the same time he was seeing me, and he found the both spaces to be helpful because I provide different aspects in my own kind of weird way to explore those parts of yourself. But like he had narcissistic parents that in a dysfunctional family setup where at the end of the day he felt like he was very smart, but he didn't feel like his inner child. When he was a child, he was just kind of not really talked down on. I just don't think people saw him eye to eye a lot of the times. And I think maybe when you overcorrect kids a lot, even you'll notice that there's a lot of insecurity in the inner child, which I think a lot of us have insecurities with the inner child because society has its way of understanding kids, but also kind of damaging them in their own free will authenticity aspects. So like
Right.
usually the inner child comes through because there is something to have been healed or understood, but some people embrace it better than others. So like we've seen it where it gets like sorry, the sun's draining me. I don't know. It's baby steps, but at the end of the day, we all have experienced our inner child in some way, shape, or form. Some of us have better relationships with it or not. Just as an example, I've also seen like metaphysical aspects pretend to be an internal family system, and that's where I get more weary on because you can't force someone to explore themselves if they're not ready. So like, and especially because it does bring up some of the older things that you've been through in life. So it's, let's tread lightly sometimes with the harder cases.
That makes sense, and it kind of also, I'm wondering what, like, when people are like saying, oh, my dreams are broken, I feel broken. How do you go about like piecing together, like, they may have in one dream one piece of, that they're trying to, of the picture they're trying to make, and another dream has another piece. How do you figure out how to connect the dots?
There's usually similar patterns or something of, even if it's just a tiny little pattern, it usually carries its own signature, I guess, to it. If that makes sense. Each internal part has its own signature, would be the best way to say it. Maybe not always uses the same symbolism, but it has its same signature or pattern, which that's how I usually notice them stand out the most. And sometimes it's a little more complex. And, I've been known with some of the clients I've worked with for a longer period of time to sit here in a session and dig back and be like, didn't we see something like this a couple months ago in a dream? And we'll try to flip through the notes and find them. I usually try to have a hard copy or like a digital copy of the dreams too, so I can flip through and see and kind of we'll like literally go through and just start picking away at it, even if it was like 6 months ago, and if it resonates with something that's currently going on. So, like some patterns are going to be more obvious than others. Some of them are very discreet. So like those ones are more fun because you really get to like it's like a scavenger hunt a tad bit. We go through and we're just searching for them and we're like something's ringing a bell here. We've seen this before. Where did we see this? And we start to dig into it more.
Yeah. We I kind of asked around this, but earlier, but I'm wondering, like, say, a soldier, and you're viewing their dreams, and you're like, they're sharing the horrors that they went through. Do you ever sit there and being like, going, how did this person be where they are today going through all of this? How did they get there? Or do you sit back and just say, hey, it's their dream, that's them, and just let it go?
Yeah, just let it go. I try not to overthink too much. It's my space to create for other people. So at the end of the day, I'm trying to, I mean, I talk a lot still, but I really try to make it as comfortable for them and what's going on. And we've had some weird dreams come across that were like very metaphysical, where we're, when we work with like demonology has come up several times with several other people. So like that's a hard one. I try not to tell people what to believe or what to think. I let them explore a lot and bring their own definition to stuff. At the end of the day, I think that's important. So it's not to have someone telling you what to think or giving you advice or feeding you information that's not authentic to them.
Right. And I wonder too if you ever have clients who are like metaphysically trained and so they know how to use the metaphysics to help themselves. Will go and say, well, I really can't share this dream because I feel like, it's too much. So then they give you like a metaphysical version of the dream where they're like, okay, let me use what I know here and describe it this way. Do you ever come across that? And
No, usually people will share the dream, but if they're metaphysical, which I've had a few of them be more metaphysical or spiritual, and like they tend to hold a lot more opinion or insight on what's going on with that. So like, and I support it, and I might have a conversation about it or throw out some ideas even. Um, it's a teamwork effort is what I really try to have it be. Not just about me telling them what's going on in their reality. I want them to also kind of speak it back and express what's going on too,
that's really
however it be.
cool. And periodically, you've been seeing. I'm sure you've seen on the bottom of the screen. I've been sharing your website,
Oh yeah.
and so people know where to find you. Is that the best place to find you, or
Yeah. I always say my website's a wormhole of information, so you'll find all kinds of stuff on there.
yeah, you do have a really cool website. I do have to say.
Thank
Now,
you.
now I mentioned in your intro how you like to help people, and so if you're okay with it, I'd like to kind of switch gears for a little bit to recognize another project that you're working on, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'm sharing the link to it. It's a Facebook group, and if I remember it right, because I remember when we were talking over the weekend, I got the name confused, and you were like, "Hey, yeah, maybe we should call it that." But so it's the Conscious Collective, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So why don't you share with people what that is and what your goal with that is?
Nice. Well, it's the Conscious Collective Spiritual Resources for the Modern World. It's a collective of spiritual entrepreneurs coming and sharing all of their services, their knowledge, their inner journeys, and connecting with readers and potential clients, and just kind of a good space for seekers to come seek and for the spiritual entrepreneurs to actually connect with people on a personal basis versus just chasing the Facebook wave and screaming into the void of the internet type thing. Um, we tend to make a bigger wave together than individually. So, and did originally start out as a newsletter, and then, I had all this awesome content on the newsletter and I was just sharing it once a month. And I was like, man, this stuff needs to be shared repeatedly and often, and not just on one platform. So we started the Facebook group, which has definitely evolved a lot. So I know it's still like only 2 months new for the Facebook group, but we've got a few people there who want to start doing like lives, doing personal chat rooms to kind of work on their stuff. So we've got shamanic healing practitioners, we've got life coaches in all different lanes and niches of expertise. Um, We've got people who make digital content like yourself. So we got a lot of YouTube and podcasts that go on there. Yoga is on there. So we really try to cover the mind, body, and soul part. So there's a lot going on because like so, and I like it because at the end of the day, I have a history of a lot of kind of being a business owner since I'm 34 now. So like for the last 13 years, um, which for me, it's funny. I wanted to help business owners, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do that yet as a life coach, and it kind of just evolved organically. So I try to help out as much as I can, helping people with marketing, getting past any blockers in that area, and then getting their businesses more off the ground too. Because we all have something amazing to offer. It's just sometimes we're just not getting it out there. So I'm really trying to create a good harmonious balance between the spiritual entrepreneurs and the seekers.
And that's a beautiful thing because even I've been starting to realize with having different background shows that guests or people who are watching actually are gravitating towards shows that I never thought they would gravitate towards, and so we really don't know what people are going to gravitate towards, and so it's
Mhm.
really cool that you took the time and gathered up some people and sought people and put together this little like hub of everything. And I have to say, being fairly new to it myself, that the idea of it first, I was like, wow, this is ambitious. But then being a part of it, like you're saying, with the Facebook group and everything, I'm like, my mind had me thinking that I'm going to be overwhelmed helping with this. And it's like, no, it's like, yeah, stuff comes in, people ask questions. Doesn't take much to answer a question. And it's like all these conversations start building up, and it's like, wow, I didn't even realize that I was having like these deep conversations or deep thoughts like other people were. And so it's really cool that you've given a space for that.
Yeah, it is really fun watching it just evolve. And there's enough people involved where you really don't have to always be hands on. You can just connect what resonates back. And there's so much variety now. It's kind of fun. It's a fun space if no one's, on their spiritual journey or looking maybe for mental health. You go on there and follow along, and you could ask questions. You'll have people start interacting and responding back, or you could start a conversation under one of the posts that you liked and ask and ask the person or the practitioner directly. And yeah, so like it's more than just sharing ads over and over again. I mean, it's the point where we're actually getting to know people and building relationships or connections. um, if they use the services or not. It's just kind of makes it way more personable, which I like about that.
Right. And um, I have to say, I shared with you that I plugged the newsletter and the group on the weekend I was on with my talk that I gave at the Paracon. And I wanted to share with you that I know it was partly for me, but I felt like I was standing there for you and your vision. Is when I said yes, I published, I got, she published an article and poem of mine, and now I'm doing, we talked about doing the holiday special,
Mhm.
look into it. And the few people that were there listening to the talk all stood up and gave an applause. And I
Oh,
was
that's
like,
cool.
and I felt like that was so cool. And then I was like, oh, I wish Chelsey could see this because that would probably totally, because I know you're just as human as the rest of us and the stress and have those days of, is this even worth it? Going through all of this and to have people just hear about it, not even see it, just stand up and applaud it. I thought was really
That's so
cool.
cool. Yeah, thank you. That is cool. It's a I didn't want to be like just any other Facebook group where it was just a all bunch of spam, basically. Because we've all been in Facebook groups like that too. And I was like, and it's more than a Facebook group. It's this newsletter, which I say is a wannabe digital magazine, and you can be as creative and as active as you want in the group. It's just it all depends on the person and what they want to do and how creative they can think and run with it.
Right. And I remember when you approached me for it, and I was like, I kept having all these questions to you, like, are you sure you want me to do this? Because I'm not published. I've never done articles or anything. And you're like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, and am I supposed, how often am I supposed to be doing this? And you were like, whenever you want. I'm like, really? So if I miss a month, I don't get X'd off the team or something. You're like, no. I was like, oh man, that made it so much more comforting because I was like, because life happens and it's like we always will say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this or that, and then it's like, well, that time passed. Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah. Micromanaging sucks too, first off. So it's nice to just have it go organically. People, especially in like who are the spiritual entrepreneur type, like we do what aligns with us and what works. We don't really always want to force the work. It's supposed to be enjoyable and fun. So I think when it's a space like that, like, yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
people
and
do. And like, I didn't put an article in this month. My life was hectic and I was doing all the formatting and stuff, but no, I didn't write an article. I just shared some creative works and that was about it.
no, and the other thing I have to say, and I want to point out for anybody who's listening, I know we talk about like drama free, judgment free zones and like a safe, we say somewhere safe, but there's always something that comes in. I know that from the paranormal field and everyday life too, and metaphysics. But I have to say, since end of August, because that's when you reached out to me, and so mid August, so it was too late for August, but I started in September. I can say I have never seen anyone say to someone what you're writing is wrong, or I don't, attack somebody for a thought or an opinion. Everyone is nice and just shares, and if they don't agree with it, they just simply put it down as going, well, here's my opinion and thought around it. And
Yeah.
I love how I don't know if that is partly you or just the people that you brought in and the people that are coming to the group, but I love how it truly is a safe place.
Yeah. I think a lot of us all align in that thought, because we're all exploring our own journeys in our own individual way. And the thing is that you don't have to have everything perfect or perfectly right. It's an evolution on itself. So I think it's good to show the process of evolution too. And there's so much variety. That's why I tell people, it's like, you don't have to become a confident writer to be in the group. I was like, you just have to write from your heart chakras. All I ask, just write from your heart and let it just come out, because, you know, we could read these academic articles all day long if we wanted to, but sometimes it's boring. And I think the best stories are the ones that come from the individual perspective. So,
Right. And
yeah, it's as well.
it was funny. Yeah, and it was funny too because I remember my first article with you was my story, and I'm really hesitant to share my story because I've been attacked over it, and people misinterpret what's said or something. And I was like, when I wrote it and I sent it to you, I was like, let me know what needs to be changed because I was like, I had the feeling something was going to be changed and everything, and you were like, no, let's leave it alone as is, and I was like, really?
Nice. Yep. I've never asked anyone to change their article or do something different. Now, sometimes they will send me a week later an updated copy, and I'm like, oh man, now you're messing with my ADHD. I gotta go make edits.
Yeah. No,
But
that would never be me. I'm one and done apparently because I'm like, yeah. And it's funny too, is because when I would write papers or stuff for school, I'd go through several drafts trying to make it fine tuned and perfect.
mhm.
And I'll just sit down and write the topic, put it together, and be like, okay. And I'm like, how's this sound? And you're like, perfect. I'm like, cool, one draft, done.
Yep. It should be that way. And I get, there's maybe spaces in the world where people want it to be super perfect. I think perfection sometimes is a little goofy, and the group is all about humanity and reaching our core of humanity. So at the end of the day, no one's complained. None of the readers have. So it's good stuff. And if there's something that doesn't resonate with you as a reader, there's a way more other content. So like there's something in there for everybody. Um,
Right.
and
And
that's why I love spirituality because it's never really black and white. It's all within our perception of it and how we perceive it and our own personal journeys. So there is no right or wrong way. And I try not to overthink the whole editing aspect. I'll go through and correct the little things that are spelled wrong, maybe here and there, but that's about it.
wow, knowing that now, I feel even more impressed because I never thought of myself as a great speller.
I have Grammarly. It highlights it for me, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, but so yeah, so with your going back now, back to the dream analysis, what's your goal and you feel like the ultimate ending that you are wanting to achieve with your dream analysis coaching?
Well, I have a couple goals. I don't know which one would be the biggest, but I would love to actually do some more Carl Jung courses and get certified and try to get into some of those cool groups because I think Jungians are so cool and like I want to hang out with the cool kids. But I also want to explore shamanism soon or at some point because I feel because I come up with a lot of metaphysics and how to handle that or and it's weird because right now I can see some metaphysics on a negative side, and I can help a little bit, try to put them, especially with astral projecting or in dreams, try to get them into a higher vibrating state. But like, I don't know how to approach it all the time on a deeper level. So I think if I do like shamanic healing practicing at some point in my life, that will help maybe with some of that balancing act on the soul level. Because I've seen demonology a few times, and I've studied demonology a lot, and the universe keeps bringing that up. So I know shamanism kind of gets into it a little bit more too. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of cross everything into one bubble and have it. Um, but one of my largest goals is get into hypnosis, which is just another way to really dive into the subconsciousness and help pull out some of the missing content or go through the file cabinet um and help and so those are kind of my main three. I'd like to be able to help with the metaphysical aspects. I'd like to do more of the subconscious diving and pull out more details that are needed, whatever that may be. It's going to be in the future. And then kind of mixing it all with the dream analysis still. So I don't know,
Hmm,
it'll be fun.
sounds
And of
like
course
it.
I love
And
Carl Jung, so
who doesn't? And
right.
yeah, I'm like, I just totally lost my train of thought on that because I was like, yeah, who really doesn't? um,
Sorry.
no, no, you're totally fine. This is all the fun of having live shows. It happens, and so can't edit it out, so you might as well just go with it.
Right.
So one question I have for you is: you keep mentioning, you've hinted at like a few times mentioning like demonology. Have you ever thought of or had anyone who's like in the paranormal field like come to you and being like, hey, I was just at this place. Now I'm, seeing this in dreams and put those together? Have you ever thought about that aspect of, what you do or
Yeah, there's a lot of metaphysics that go on, good, bad, and ugly. I've seen some stuff where it's like, okay, I cannot do an exorcism or assist in some of that, but it's weird being able to point out the patterns and being like, that's not you. We've had it where a negative entity was pretending to be a part of the internal family system. And that's really iffy for me because I don't want to sit here and say a disconnected aspect of ourselves is that, but it got to the point where the higher self was like, that is not us. And it was being very obvious. And it was showing up even in not just in the dreams, but in the meditations that he was doing. And he said it was like this humanoid claw gripping his heart and it wouldn't let him access his heart chakra. And it was kind of talking crap on me and the self-discovery trying to heal, like it was just being nasty and it was just like this nasty voice. So we did a lot of sessions, probably like a month or two's worth, trying to figure out exactly if that was him or not, or a manifested part from someone who may have been talking crap on him throughout life. It ended up not really being any of those. It was just, you know, it was kind of weird, but it was kind of going back and forth a little bit where like it was like, is this the ego we're working with, or is this something else? And then we eventually noticed that the ego was definitely separate from that. And it was just, it was a lot. But then in other cases, it can be like way more obvious. So like an example, one client was what he watched Freddy Krueger when he was like 7, and then he started having the nightmares. But the nightmares were getting like really bad to where he was starting to physically have experiences during the day or before bed with it. It's hard with a kid because they have a big imagination, right? But it
Right.
seemed like it was manifesting into the physical aspects for a while. And like not just him, but his siblings were experiencing the shadow people in their home. And it wasn't always Freddy Krueger. Sometimes it would just be a shadow person or like demonic looking. And then it went away for like a good portion of his life and then came back later in his adult years with sleep paralysis and with an vengeance. And he was fighting them in dreams. He had Archangel Michael came to help clean house out. But one thing I say is metaphysics is definitely becoming very apparent that it's hard to avoid in the sessions, but it's also good to know your tools and how to use it. So like some from my personal experience, when I first was waking up and was astral projecting and having like I was doing it involuntarily, so I wasn't trying to do it on purpose, but I kept waking up on the lower realms and I was experiencing demons. And I was also dealing with depression. So it was like they tend to mirror metaphysical experiences in this case tend to mirror what we're going on inside. So like if you work on inner healing and you're healthy and you're vibrating higher, you won't be experiencing things like that. So for me,
Right.
I had to learn to go from the ghetto up to the higher realms. That's what I call it, from the ghetto. Uh, I actually told my client that because he didn't realize. He's like, I've been beating these demons' butts for 20 years now. And he's like, there's got to be more. Every time I try to have a good dream, they show up and ruin it. And it was like they were harassing him. They were, at one point, it was pretending to be his friends until he decided he didn't want to play anymore. And I remember going through like a 2-hour session. And at the end of it, I saw the pattern and I was like, the demon wants to be your friend. I was like, it keeps pretending to want to play or play nice until he doesn't cooperate or do what it wants, and then it loses its crap and it would show its true colors. But it was also manifesting in the daytime where like he was physically seeing things and like things were happening around the house in front of him. So it was very, very extremely paranormal activity at that point, and it was negative. And it's just creepy because at one point he thought it was a cool trick or something fun, and then I was like, no,
No.
that's not a good thing. It's trying to be your friend. I was like, and I wasn't trying to freak anyone out, so I hate saying these things, but it's like that's why I would like to get into maybe shamanism a bit more to kind of help with some of the stronger cases.
Right.
There's a lot
No,
going
that makes
on.
total sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's cool that you want to do that to help people. And I mean, I'm kind of curious too with, all that you go through. Are you interested in the paranormal at all yourself? Or are you like, nope, I'm content with where I'm at in the world and y'all can have that?
I have a healthy curiosity for it. I do take breaks, especially when studying like demonology, because it does get a little heavy. But like, no, I love metaphysics. I love the paranormal. Try to, I come at it with a curiosity to understand it and to try to learn how to not just survive it for myself, because I don't really experience a lot of things anymore. It's been a long time, but like, it's just good stuff to know because, it does exist, and to sit there and be ignorant of it doesn't mean it's not happening, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's one of those
Right.
things that when I'm doing my sessions, I've had a few people where they want me to like share some more information on, like they need help. People need help when they have these things. I'm not really someone who's nervous about the paranormal. I mean, I guess if it snuck up on me, I might be like, ugh. but I've had to learn through my own journey how to kind of battle the dark side. Learned how to use my aura as a shield or a weapon in dreams. I've learned how to create light and to fight against things. I've learned that I've had guides and that I can ask them for help. We have a lot of resources down in right in the metaphysical aspect. So it's learning how to use your resources, I think, is the coolest thing and the best tool you could have. So like, not don't be stuck in the negative, but learn how to get over the negative. And like as I was saying before, it is a mirror. It mirrors your internal aspects with your exterior. So like, it's the energy exchange. I've noticed a lot of the times. If you have something going on negative internally, you're going to have an energy match with something metaphysically, probably too.
Yeah. We're approaching the hour, and are you okay to go a little bit longer with a couple more questions, or do you have sessions and stuff to do?
No, I just going to help my mom here in a few. I can go a little longer though.
Okay, so real quick, one question I have is you talk about seeing things in the dreams and everything, and I wonder if you've ever come across guardians and they show up as cloaked figures, and when you're in trouble appear out of nowhere as light and help. Have you come across those?
Yeah, I have, even with my clients, which is really cool because uh, they don't always. He can sit for a minute. It's okay. Uh, so, like it's funny because it took me a long time to like meet mine or be able to work with mine. But like when I work with my some of my clients, they like freaking happened overnight, and I was like, oh, that's so not fair. But so like guides look like angels. They can be like your higher self would be your internal guide or your soul guide, right? It's you guiding yourself. But I've also noticed, like in my sessions so far, like, we get into aliens a lot because a lot of these guides are aliens. Like we've seen Octurians, Tegitans, and Plaudians so far, and not just with one client, but a group of them. And they like share like information about the world or the universe, just different sorts of knowledge. And it's interesting to me because I'm sitting here listening to everyone one on one, and they don't even really talk to each other. And some of these clients know nothing about this topic, and they don't even absorb information that would be used in their subconsciousness. And it's just coming out in these dreams as black as white. And um, they all interact and shared like similar stuff. So, like, I had one client where he was connected with his guides who were Octurian, and she was telling him about alien wars on Earth back before the flood. Sorry, he's got a Nerf gun. This is Rocky. He's joining us for the end of it. And okay, so when I was talking to him, he was getting information about energy grids, how they had people reincarnating on Earth with special abilities to help the planet or raise its vibrations. And then maybe a week later, I had this one client who showed up for just one session, really, and we went through a lot of the alien stuff with him too, and he was having all kinds of dreams with the Tagitans, and they were explaining how some of the same information that my other client had, but it built up onto it even more. And then I had a third client who had something similar happen, and it was still feeding some of the same information. And I've seen this happen a few times, not with just aliens, but even with the demonology topics. We, at the end of it, one of my clients randomly only had one dream. And she goes, "Well, I had a dream that, and I saw Jesus, and he was just talking to these kids." And all she kept thinking was, "How cool. It's Jesus. I love Jesus." And then I was like, "Well, what was Jesus talking about?" And she goes, "He was talking about demons." And I go, "Really? What did he say?" She goes, "He said they exist in the nature and they're just black matter and blah 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 or something like that." And it kind of answered our question a little bit with three other clients. So it's the idea that it's not just our dreams that are small puzzle pieces for our own internal aspects, but it tends to be a mass collective kind of thing too, because we were all,
Right.
they weren't talking to each other, but they all were having little bits of puzzle pieces that made a big picture for my sessions on a mass scale. So it's interesting. So yeah, we get a lot of alien stuff popping up. We get a lot of demon things that pop up. We get a lot of the internal family system that pops up. So I always say what I break down my dreams into two categories at this point: metaphorical and metaphysical. We have our emotional processing, our inner identities, all having their voice, and that's like your internal personal layer of dreams. And then you can walk out the front door and you have this, mass collective dream type thing with other conscious aspects outside of yourself.
That's really cool. And
Hmm.
last question I want to ask is kind of something that happened with me, and I'm just curious if this is normal with dreams and everything. Is I went through a process where opening up the door to the past lives, and I said leave it open because I want to know, what I did or what I need to know from my pasts to help me in the present. And for like 6 months, maybe to a year, when I would close my eyes, I would just see red. It's like I'd start to see a meadow, and then red would just drip down over it, and just everything would turn red. And so I was
Oh,
like, I was getting the feeling like it was blood, and I was like, why am I seeing this? Why is everything turning to this?
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that definitely sounds like you died in a meadow, but you should try to dig deeper and figure out more details of why or what was going on. What was the pattern that left you in that predicament?
Hmm.
Um, that's something. So
Now,
I've been doing more shamanic healing practice sessions with Olga, actually, my friend Olga, and that was something that I was inquiring on. Was just one question, and it brought up three lives with the same pattern. So we try to dig deeper into it and figure out more detail, because knowing you died is one thing, but why did you die? What led to that type of thing? And I do believe
right,
setting intentions or even meditating before bed and falling asleep, like lay down, meditate, fall asleep. I think you can, use that as a tool to explore more with intention while you sleep.
right. Now, to be clear, when I say I would see red, is sometimes it'd be a meadow, sometimes it would just be the red, sometimes it would be a sky, and then the red. It was no matter where I went, I'd always see, or if I went nowhere, I would still see the red. And so I was like, what is my past trying to tell me that this is what it gives me, this image?
Yeah. Well, how did it make you feel besides confused?
It made me feel like I would actually like say to people, I will not become a soldier in the military. I have seen enough bloodshed the last several lifetimes. And I would hear
Uh,
myself saying that, and it's like, yeah, and it's like, and then I would say, and they were like, well, why do you say that? And I'd go, if you'd seen what I've seen, you would not want to go there.
yeah. It's true. There's a lot going on in there, and that's why I say it's all like this file cabinet. Oh, good job. Uh, no, that's interesting. Yeah, you should definitely not go to war. You sounds like you've died before. Maybe you would die again or something. The patterns, gotta break the patterns.
Well, interesting thing is no, I did not join the U.S. military, but I found out I was drafted into other wars. I'm finding out, and
Uh,
so I'm like. Oh man, I tried so hard not to, but yeah, it didn't work.
It's okay. I'm pretty sure I drowned or was killed the three lives I looked into. So I was like, oh, that's lovely. All for love. And I was like, love kills.
It does. I had one life where I was burned at the stake voluntarily for someone in my family.
Yeah. See, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, um, do you have any other questions before we try to wrap this up? Because my kids are running around in front of me, and I don't know if you can hear them or not, but
No, no, we're good. And thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing what you do, and thank you for doing what you do. I
yeah,
appreciate everyone in the chat group that came and everyone that's watching this. So don't forget, if you're on Facebook, come check out the Facebook group. There may be information there
it's
you
down
like.
there, or down there.
And if you have questions, you can always reach her on her website here. And so thank you for coming on this afternoon. And to everyone who's watching this, wherever you are in the world, have a blessed day, a blessed afternoon, blessed evening, and a great night.
Great. Bye, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
You have just listened to the energy that surrounds us with your host, Michael Kopf. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.